gracious unto me, and I in my turn desire to do you a kind action. So tell me truly, have you always had that white scared face and those stony eyes?" The king hung his head. "Tell me truly," continued the holy Jogi, "have you any strange woman in your palace?" Then Ali Mardan, feeling a strange relief in speaking, told the Jogi about the finding of the maiden so lovely and forlorn in the forest. "She is no handmaiden of the Emperor of China. She is no woman," quoth the Jogi fearlessly. "She is nothing but a Lamia, the dreadful 200-years-old snake which has the power of taking woman's shape." Hearing this, King Ali Mardan was at first indignant, for he was madly in love with the stranger. But when the Jogi insisted, he became alarmed, and at last promised to obey the holy man's orders, and so discover the truth or falsehood of his words. Therefore, that same evening, he ordered 2 kinds of kikri to be made ready for supper, and placed in one dish, so that one half was sweet kikri, and the other half salt. Now when, as usual, the king sat down to eat out of the same dish with the snake woman, he turned the salt side towards her, and the sweet side towards himself. She found her portion very salt, but seeing the king eat his with relish, and without remark, finished hers in silence. But when they had retired to rest, and the king, obeying the Jogi's orders, had feigned sleep, the snake woman became so dreadfully thirsty, in consequence of all the salt food she had eaten, that she longed for a drink of water, and as there was none in the room, she was obliged to go outside to get some. Now, if a snake woman goes out at night, she must resume her own loathsome form. So, as King Ali Mardan lay feigning sleep, he saw the beautiful form in his arms change into a deadly, slimy snake that slid from the bed out of the door into the garden. He followed it softly, watching it drink of every fountain by the way, until it reached the Dal Lake, where it drank and bathed for hours. Fully satisfied of the truth of the Jogi's story, King Ali Mardan begged him for aid in getting rid of the beautiful horror. This the Jogi promised to do if the king would faithfully obey orders. So they made an oven of 100 different kinds of metal melted together and closed by a strong lid and a heavy padlock. This they placed in a shady corner of the garden, fastening it securely to the ground by strong chains. When all was ready, the king said to the snake woman, "My heart's beloved, let us wander in the gardens alone today and amuse ourselves by cooking our own food." She, nothing loath, consented, and so they wandered about in the garden, and when dinner time came, set to work with laughter and mirth to cook their own food. The king heated the oven very hot and kneaded the bread, but being clumsy at it, he told the snake woman he could do no more, and that she must bake the bread. This she at first refused to do, saying that she disliked ovens. But when the king pretended to be vexed, averring she could not love him since she refused to help, she gave in and set to work with a very bad grace to tend the baking. Then, Just as she stooped over the oven's mouth to turn the loaves, the king, seizing his opportunity, pushed her in, and clapping down the cover, locked and double-locked it. When the snake woman found herself caught in the scorching oven, she bounded so that had it not been for the strong chains, she would have bounded out of the garden, oven and all. But as it was, all she could do was to bound up and down, whilst the king and the jogi piled fuel on to the fire, and the oven grew hotter and hotter. So it went on from 4 o'clock one afternoon to 4 o'clock the next, when the snake woman ceased to bound, and all was quiet. They waited until the oven grew cold, and then opened it, when not a trace of the snake woman was to be seen, only a tiny heap of ashes, out of which the jogi took a small round stone and gave it to the king, saying, "This is the real essence of the snake woman, and whatever you touch with it will turn to gold." But King Ali Mardan said such a treasure was more than any man's life was worth, since it must bring envy and battle and murder to its possessor. So when he went to Atok, he threw the magical snake stone into the river, lest it should bring strife into the world.